The next morning, Lucas noticed a shift in Zakhar's behavior. He was always a force to be reckoned with, but today, there was something different, something deliberate. The usual arrogance was still there, but now it was paired with careful calculation. Zakhar was working. Lucas sat on the edge of his bunk, watching as Zakhar made his rounds through the prison yard. He wasn't just walking, he was choosing. Certain inmates, certain guards, certain moments. Every interaction felt precise, as if Zakhar had already mapped out every piece of the puzzle and was now slotting them into place. Lucas had been in the game long enough to recognize manipulation when he saw it. The way Zakhar leaned in to whisper to one guard, clapped another inmate on the shoulder like they were old friends, passed something subtle. A cigarette, a folded note, something Lucas couldn't quite see, to a third. Zakhar was setting something into motion, and it was big. When yard time ended, Lucas followed Zakhar back into their cell, waiting until the heavy metal door slammed shut behind them before crossing his arms. "You're up to something," he said, eyes narrowed. Zakhar smirked, unbothered. "You don't miss a thing, do you, doll?" Lucas took a step closer. "I know a setup when I see one. What the hell are you doing?" Zakhar exhaled, rolling his shoulders. "Making preparations." "For what?" Zakhar met his gaze, golden eyes glinting with something dangerous. "For the escape." Lucas's stomach tightened. "You're actually doing it, this weekend." Zakhar nodded. "Best time. Fewer patrols, lazy guards, most of the inmates more focused on whatever illegal shit they've got going on." Lucas shook his head, trying to wrap his mind around it. "Why now? Why so soon?" Zakhar tilted his head, considering him. Then he stepped closer, his presence overwhelming, heat radiating off his body. Lucas swallowed hard but held his ground. Zakhar reached out, brushing his fingers along Lucas's jaw. "Because you're here now." Lucas's breath hitched. "What?" Zakhar's smirk softened, but his eyes were still burning. "I was always going to leave, doll. But I didn't have a reason to rush it. Now I do." Lucas frowned. "I don't understand." Zakhar leaned in, voice dropping to a near whisper. "I want a new life, and I want it with you." Lucas's heart skipped a beat. He searched Zakhar's face, looking for the lie, the manipulation. But there was only truth in those golden eyes, raw and unfiltered. Lucas's throat was dry. "You barely know me." Zakhar smirked. "I know enough." Silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken things. Lucas could feel the weight of Zakhar's words pressing against him, impossible to ignore. Lucas exhaled shakily. "And if I say no?" Zakhar's smirk didn't waver. "You won't." Lucas hated that he was right. The weekend arrived with an eerie sense of calm. Lucas had barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, his mind raced through the countless ways this could go wrong. One mistake, one wrong turn, and they'd either be dead or locked away forever with no second chances. Zakhar, on the other hand, was as relaxed as ever. He stretched lazily, rolling his shoulders as if this was just another day. If he felt even a sliver of anxiety, he didn't show it. Lucas envied him for that. "Ready, doll," Zakhar murmured, voice thick with amusement. He was already by the door, watching Lucas with that unreadable golden gaze. Lucas took a breath, forcing himself to nod. "Yeah," Zakhar grinned. "Good, then let's go." Everything moved quickly. The guards Zakhar had bribed did their job, turning a blind eye as they slipped through restricted areas. An inmate fight broke out in the East Block, planned, of course, drawing attention away from their movements. Every step had been carefully orchestrated, every risk accounted for. Still, Lucas's heart pounded wildly as they made their way through the underground maintenance tunnels. Zakhar led the way, navigating like he had the entire blueprint memorized in his head. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they emerged outside the prison walls, the cold morning air biting against Lucas's skin. He sucked in a deep breath, barely believing they had made it this far. Zakhar turned to him, grinning. "Told you I'd get us out." Lucas exhaled a shaky laugh. "We're not free yet." Zakhar chuckled. Details. They stole a car. Zakhar had planned that too, and drove for hours, far away from the prison, deeper into the wilderness. The tension in Lucas's chest didn't ease until they finally reached their destination. A secluded cabin nestled deep in the woods, hidden from prying eyes. As soon as they stepped inside, exhaustion hit. Lucas barely had the energy to take in their surroundings before collapsing onto the worn couch, his limbs heavy. Zakhar, however, was in a different mood. He prowled around the cabin with ease, checking the place like he owned it. When he finally turned back to Lucas, there was a distinct gleam in his eyes. "You look good here," Zakhar mused, stepping closer. "Out of that prison, relaxed." Lucas snorted. "I feel like I'm about to pass out." Zakhar chuckled, dropping onto the couch beside him. "Then sleep." Lucas sighed, rubbing his eyes. "Can't. Too wired." Zakhar's voice lowered. "I can help with that." Lucas turned his head, eyes narrowing. "And what exactly does that mean?" Zakhar smirked. "Relax, doll. I just meant that I could take care of you." Lucas raised a brow. "Since when are you the caring type?" Zakhar leaned in, his voice a low purr. "Since you became mine." Lucas swallowed hard. There was something different in the way Zakhar was looking at him now. Less teasing, more intent. Zakhar reached out, brushing a strand of hair from Lucas's face. "You really don't get it, do you?" Lucas blinked. "Get what?" Zakhar's smirk softened. "I didn't break out of that place just to run. I did it because I wanted this. With you." Lucas's breath hitched. He searched Zakhar's face, looking for the joke, the lie. But there was none. The cabin was quiet, save for the soft crackling of the fireplace and the occasional clatter of utensils against a pan. The scent of something rich and savory filled the space, wrapping the room in warmth. Zakhar moved through the small kitchen with an ease that didn't quite match his usual demeanor. His massive frame looked almost out of place in the cozy space. Yet there was a strange domesticity to the way he handled the simple act of cooking. He had never been the kind of man to play house. But with Lucas here, something inside him had shifted. He wanted this. He wanted them. Lucas stirred on the couch, blinking awake as he took in the dim glow of the room. His body was still heavy with exhaustion, but the aroma of food pulled him from the last remnants of sleep. His eyes landed on Zakhar, who stood over the stove, stirring something in a pan with surprising care. Lucas sat up, running a hand through his hair. "Since when do you cook?" Zakhar glanced over his shoulder, smirking. "Since I decided I wanted to take care of you." Lucas raised an eyebrow. "Didn't take you for the domestic type." Zakhar chuckled. "Neither did I." Lucas stretched, his muscles aching from everything they had been through. The reality of their escape was still settling in, but for now, in this cabin, it felt like they had a moment of peace. He stood and walked over to the small kitchen, peering over Zakhar's shoulder. "What are you making?" "Something edible," Zakhar said, clearly amused. "Sit, I'll bring it to you." Lucas hesitated but did as he was told, sinking into one of the chairs at the worn wooden table. It was strange, watching Zakhar like this. In prison, he had been a monster, a force of nature that everyone feared. But here, in this quiet moment, he was just a man trying to make breakfast. A few minutes later, Zakhar set a plate in front of him. Scrambled eggs, toast, and some kind of meat that Lucas wasn't entirely sure he wanted to question. It wasn't gourmet, but it was warm, and after everything, it was more than enough. Zakhar sat across from him, watching with something almost expectant in his gaze. Lucas took a bite, humming in mild surprise. "Not bad," Zakhar grinned. Told you. They ate in silence for a while, the atmosphere oddly comfortable. For the first time in what felt like forever, there were no guards, no threats, no walls keeping them locked in. Just the two of them sharing a meal like something close to normal. As they finished, Zakhar leaned back in his chair, his golden eyes studying Lucas with quiet intensity. We're leaving tomorrow. Lucas tensed. Leaving? Zakhar nodded. Going to the city. Lucas frowned. Isn't that risky? We just got out. Zakhar smirked. I have connections, doll. People who can make sure we disappear the right way. Lucas hesitated. And then what? Zakhar leaned forward, his voice dropping into something lower, smoother. Then we start over. A new life. No more prison. No more running. Lucas let out a slow breath. Just like that? Zakhar's smirk softened, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. Just like that. Lucas narrowed his gaze. And how exactly do you plan to fund this new life? Zakhar chuckled, resting his chin on his hand. That's the part I haven't told you yet. Lucas crossed his arms. All right, let's hear it. Zakhar's expression didn't change, but something about him sharpened. I'm in the mafia, Lucas. Lucas's stomach dropped. You what? Zakhar smirked. Did you think I was just some random psycho? I have power, influence, and more money than you could spend in a lifetime. Lucas stared at him, mind racing. You're serious. Zakhar nodded. Dead serious. Lucas let out a sharp breath, running a hand down his face. And you didn't think to mention this before? Zakhar chuckled. Would it have changed anything? Lucas opened his mouth, then shut it. Because honestly, it wouldn't have. He had already thrown his lot in with Zakhar the moment he begged him for protection in that prison yard. This was just another layer to the chaos that was now his life. Zakhar leaned in, voice quieter now. This isn't just about me, Lucas. I meant what I said. I want this life with you. Lucas's breath caught. He searched Zakhar's face, looking for the deception, the manipulation. But all he found was raw, unwavering certainty. Lucas swallowed. You're insane, Zakhar grinned, and you love it. Lucas sighed, shaking his head. The next morning, the sun barely had a chance to rise before Zakhar was up and moving. He packed with efficiency, throwing their few belongings into a duffel bag like a man who had done this before. Because, of course, he had. Lucas sat on the edge of the bed, rubbing sleep from his eyes. You're really in a hurry. Zakhar smirked. The sooner we leave, the sooner I can spoil my little wife. Lucas groaned, grabbing a pillow and hurling it at him. Zakhar caught it effortlessly, laughing. Cut that out. But you wear the role so well, Zakhar teased, stepping closer, placing a firm hand under Lucas's chin and tilting his face up. Gorgeous, bratty, and all mine. Lucas swallowed, heart pounding at the intensity in Zakhar's golden gaze. It was still strange, this shift between them. Terrifying, but oddly thrilling. Fine, Lucas muttered, looking away. Let's just go. Zakhar chuckled, pressing a kiss to Lucas's temple before grabbing the bag. Let's go, doll. The drive to the city was long but smooth. Zakhar had secured them a different car, sleek and expensive, because of course he had a fleet of vehicles stashed somewhere. Lucas had stopped questioning things at this point. When they finally arrived, Lucas could only stare. Zakhar's apartment was not an apartment. It was a goddamn penthouse. Towering windows framed the skyline. The furniture looked like it belonged in a magazine, and everything about the place screamed wealth. Lucas whistled low. You really weren't lying about the money. Zakhar grinned, throwing the bag down. Told you, doll. You picked the right man. Lucas crossed his arms, feigning nonchalance. Did I have a choice? Zakhar stepped closer, voice dropping into that dangerous, amused drawl. No, not really. Lucas huffed but didn't move away as Zakhar wrapped an arm around his waist, pulling him flush against his chest. You'll get used to this, Zakhar murmured against his ear. Nice clothes, expensive food, a soft bed, and of course your incredibly handsome husband to take care of you. Lucas sighed dramatically. You're unbearable. And yet you're still here. Lucas had no comeback for that, because Zakhar was right. The day passed in a blur of settling in. Zakhar wasted no time showing Lucas around, pointing out things with an offhanded possessiveness. This is our bedroom, our kitchen, our life now. Lucas let it happen, because truthfully, there was no other life waiting for him. This was it. And maybe that wasn't such a bad thing. By evening, they were sprawled on the massive bed, the city lights glowing beyond the windows. Lucas traced patterns on Zakhar's bare chest, still trying to process everything. So, he murmured, what now? Zakhar smirked, lazily draping an arm over Lucas's waist. Now you enjoy being my spoiled little brat. Lucas rolled his eyes. Seriously. Zakhar's expression softened and he leaned in, pressing a slow kiss to Lucas's lips before murmuring against them, Now we live. Lucas let out a slow breath, and for the first time in a long time, he let himself believe it. The past was behind them. The future was theirs. And maybe it wasn't such a terrible thing to belong to a monster.